Dear girlies, welcome to the sixth note of the Notes to Her podcast. Guys, I'm so impressed. I'm loving this podcast so far, and I hope you girlies are too. Please do let me know. Leave some comments. Give me some feedback. If you don't want to leave any comments on there, do send me a text, send me a DM, and let me know what you girlies are thinking so far. Let me know what it is that you want to see. Any more topics that you want me to be talking about. Let me hear from you girlies. Yeah. How have we been? What have you been up to? I'm not gonna lie, this is a nice pre-record. So I'm really catching you girlies up. By the time this releases, there'll probably be so much more that I need to catch you girlies up on. So as always, I'm going to reflect on how my week has been. So my week has been a little bit more quieter than what it was the week before. The week before was absolutely rammed, but this week was really nice. Monday was good. It was just work. There was no step class, so I didn't do that. But then Tuesday, I was away in London for work. So that was like another away day with a different department. And that was really nice. You know, there was like over 100 people there. And it was really eye-opening. And it was a lovely structure just to kind of go through. It was really lovely meeting up with some colleagues that I'd either never spoken to before or meeting for the first time, because when it's a big organization, you kind of just tend to speak on teams, or you don't even know who's who from which team. So it was great meeting some of those and seeing some faces of people that I do know and talk to. And so, yeah, really incredible just to connect on that level. It was also really eye-opening and just inspiring to kind of talk about successes, within the organization. And it's really, really refreshing to see, the work that's being done behind the scenes, front scenes, back office things, like all of that. Really, really incredible. And super, super inspiring. And then in the afternoon, something different, which was really was talking about failures as well. And so I'll dive deep into that a little bit later on. But, this also inspired this episode, but then as well as in episode 4 when I'd spoken about, the dilemma, talking about failures and that. And so it's kind of just a continuation of that episode. And then, going to the away day this week and then hearing her failures and talking about failures with people that I'd only just met that morning was, really uncomfortable, eye-opening, good to reframe the mind around failures as well. And so, I'm super excited for this episode to be discussing that. And it was such a eye-opening session. And she really echoed a lot of things that I'd said in episode 4 as well. And I was just like, wow, it just was really empowering too. And it made me feel good about myself too, to be honest with you. That I had said that on the podcast and she essentially was echoing the same thing too. And I'm going to admit that I'm going to hold my hands up to that, because it's just period. This is how we view failures and this is what failures is about. And then Wednesday, roller skating again. They wanted us to be doing backward skating, and girlies, I can't lie. Again, the coordination for me just is not coordinating. I get so locked up and frightened. Of what I'm trying to still think. It's the falling, but I've fallen already. But then it's also what if I break a nail, break a bone, break my foot? I'm so thin about that. And I've got a holiday that I'm going to soon. So I want to make sure everything is intact. So I don't want no broken bones. I think even if I wasn't going on holiday, I would still be quite frightened anyway. So, but we'll get there, hopefully. But we've got to try these things. So, yeah. And then on Thursday, I don't know why I'm taking you through my whole day. Usually I just do highlights. I think Thursday, Friday was just, really chill. Nothing much to go on there. And then Saturday, I went to go up see my sister. Yeah, it was really nice to spend that time with her. Yeah, to see the area that she's living in. And she was doing a tour guide. And so shout out to my sister. So, that's been my week. How has your week been? Let me know. What have you been up to? Let's share. What's some highlights? And what's potentially, if there's no highlights, what are some little downfalls as well? That's what this is for, to be open and honest and vulnerable. So in today's episode, we are talking about failures. what they are, how we frame our mindset around them, all those different things. And everyone has personal experience with failures, big, small, medium, failures are failures. And I think even getting comfortable with that word is even something, because I hated that word. It's now become a slight dislike. We're just getting acquainted to each other. We're just getting acquainted to each other. But yeah, failures, I feel like, has such a big, scary connotation, surroundings around it. I feel like you hear the word failures, everyone gets that locked up, and it's just like, oh, and it can be such a thing, like when you can be a prideful person, or because everyone has pride, everyone has ego, and there's another word. I guess it's just this idea about themselves. When you hold yourself in high regards for certain things as well, it can feel like an insult to even say that word or think that word or know that you have failed at something in your life. And I'll be honest, there's been so many times that I've failed at things, and so many times I've beaten myself up at things that I feel like I shouldn't fail at, or I don't even like admitting that I may have failed at doing it. But I've noticed over the past few weeks, that in even some of the episodes that I've said, I don't like failing. I'm quite harsh on myself when it comes to things like that. I don't like even the thought of it. I like being good at everything. I know I've said that. And I'm thinking, when it comes to the whole roller skating thing, trying something new, I don't like not being good at something at first. I want to know straight away. That is the perfectionist in me. That is having the element of control in me. However, the session on Tuesday and over the past few weeks, I've started to come to terms with that word, what it means to me, because failure is subjective. It's not something where it's one size fits all for everything. It looks different to many different people. We have the failures that, society view as failures, not having a career, not having a partner, not having a house by a certain age, or you should be doing these things and all the pressures that come with that. But failure is a subjective thing. What does failure mean to you? I'm asking you girlies this, but I haven't even asked myself this. Let me dash in a bit of hypocrisy as well. You do this, I'm not going to do that. But yeah, failure is a subjective thing. What do you perceive to be that? I think is definitely something to ask yourself, and I need to ask myself as well. And I think I have done it before, but I need a refresh as to what I believe it to be now at this age, in this current, season and chapter and era that I'm in my life. What do I perceive failure to be at this point in time is a really important thing that we, I, me, you, her should navigate. So let's begin around what failure is, like a definition of that. Again, even though it's a subjective thing, what can it be defined as? Okay, so failure can be defined as the lack of success in achieving a goal, a state of not functioning correctly, or the non-performance of something expected. It describes the condition of being unsuccessful, a system or person breaking down or not meeting a requirement, and can also refer to something or someone considered unsuccessful. Common meanings of failure: lack of success. This is the most common meaning, referring to not achieving a desired outcome or objective. Non-performance or negligence, not doing something that was required or expected. An unsuccessful person or thing means something that does not meet expectations, or a person who consistently falls short of goals. And so, yeah, those are just some little tidbits of, tidbits has never come out my mouth. Those are some little definitions of, what failure is and what that means as defined by the internet. But to yourself, it's really important to try and answer that question of, what does failure mean to you, and how do you view that as well? The session on Tuesday, let me go into that and let me give a bit of a background and, let you girlies in. So it was delivered by the organization, I believe, called Pizza for Losers. And it was this woman who was discussing, her history, her story about how she had created the organization, and essentially is about bringing people together over pizza and talking about their failures. And it's about getting people uncomfortable and discussing their failures, but becoming comfortable with that. And so she was telling her story, and she had also given some stats around certain words of how we view failure. A lot of words that were coming up was shame, embarrassment, guilt, lack of confidence. Like those were the unmotivated, those were the kind of things that was coming up. And she gave us this booklet and also to do exercises of, number one, what our expectations are by the end of the session and the end of her talk, what our expectations are about failures, like if we could describe it in a word. And then also one of the exercises was basically to think of a failure, whether this was meant to be work related or personal, I don't know, I can't remember, but think of a failure and then go around the room and tell people that failure. Internally screaming, girlies, I am even now, I'm still internally screaming, I'm cringing. But I think, and I feel like that was such a good way to begin to unpick and unlearn our own mindsets around how we view failure as a whole. In the session, I had given an example of the podcast, me doing that now and learning so many different things, and from pre-production things to the actual production of it, to post-production, to the aspect of having to do content as well, and trying to navigate through that too, and all those emotions and stuff that can come with that as well, and the thoughts, and there's just so much that can come with beginning a new journey, a new chapter. And with that, even though there may be successes, there's also failures that come with that as well. And so, that was my initial, I'll be honest, that was my initial failure, was talking about the podcast and just saying, I started a podcast and this has happened. Most of them were work related ones anyway. So I quickly changed mine. I was so uncomfortable with saying it because I told, I think maybe 3 people. And their initial reaction, I think, when people tell you something maybe bad that's happened, is to go pull a bit of a face. And I know I'd done that to other people as well when they had thing. And we laughed and joked about it. But I know at the time I felt so crippled and uncomfortable, and it was embarrassing. It felt a bit shameful, also felt a bit cringe as well. And so when I realized other people were talking mainly about work or a little bit more other things, I was like, let me just quickly change it to a work one instead. And that, I feel still speaks a bit of facts about how I'm perceiving failure too, to be honest with you. To now feel shamed and embarrassed to say I failed at this thing specifically at the moment. And so now I've changed it instead to make it seem a little bit less impactful, because I'm avoiding facing the reality of that I've failed at something. But currently, I don't feel any type of way about it because I've faced it. I've accepted, I've failed at that at the moment. So that was one of the sessions. And then another one then was also about coming up with another failure example of a time that we failed, and then kind of working through, what was the emotions around that. If we could kind of rewrite the story to a success one, what would that look like as well? What did we learn? What skills did we, gain from doing that failing or experiencing that failure? I remember that there was a time, and this is what I'd actually put in the book as well. There was a time where I had a job, I got a new job, and I thought, okay, this is it. This is what I've studied for. This is what I'm going to enjoy doing. And I failed at that. I didn't like it. I quit, after a few months. And it knocked me so badly. It knocked my confidence. It knocked what I thought about myself. And I was just it was so difficult to try and navigate through that. I felt like I failed at life. I felt like a failure. I felt vulnerable, exposed, because I just thought, but this is what I'm meant to do. This is the expectation I had on myself. And I felt like I had failed at doing that. And sometimes when you kind of have that, put that pressure on yourself and have that expectation on yourself, when you do fail at something, whether it's big or small, it can have such a crippling impact on you. Oh gosh, I might be projecting. I'm so sorry. But if you do feel like that, please shout out. But there's so many different examples that there's things that I've failed at, and I'm sure there's the same for you as well. And again, in that episode 4, the dilemma was about, how do you begin to accept failure and all those things as well. I think it is becoming comfortable with the fact that you will fail at things in life. You're not going to be perfect at everything. And if you are a perfectionist, if you're similar to me, you like control of things, you want things to be a specific way, you don't like the thought of it, or you go in with a thought thinking like this is going to come out exactly as I want it to, and it doesn't, and it fails from your own expectation, or you've quote unquote failed at something. All those feelings can kind of like crash down, and it can be really hard to even accept that, and you can end up being quite harsh on yourself as well. I think as well, how we perceive failure at the moment. Off the top of my head now, like I haven't made any notes about this. And even before that session, and even, planning this episode and everything. But again, the shame, embarrassment, guilt, pressure, expectations that come with failure, who you are as a person, expectations of other people, if that makes sense, like being scared of what other people will think if you fail at something. These aren't words, these are just all thoughts now at this point. Despair, if we're talking emotions. Failing at things can feel so gut-wrenching. Feel like it's something where beforehand I felt like it was something where you're weak. Like if you fail, I say you, it's me. Like if I failed at something, then I would just be viewed as weak. I'd put that pressure on myself of like, you shouldn't fail, that expectation on myself of like, but I need to know how to do these things, and there has come a point now where this year, shout out to this year, yeah? Just a big shout out to you. Thank you so much. But there's come a point in time where I'm beginning to unlearn how I perceive failure, and beginning to learn shifting my mindset on how it's viewed. And like I said in note 4, failure is needed for growth. Failure is needed to learn. It really does help understand where you went wrong. But I think once you take the emotion out of it, it becomes a lot easier to view it and perceive it in a more positive way. And it's difficult to do that. It's so difficult to do that, because it's just like, I failed, and you're consumed with the emotions. But once you move past that, it's impactful, and it can be such a positive thing because it's happened for a reason. Number one, there's learning to be had from it as well. You can kind of repivot, or you can pivot your mind. It's not even repivot. You can pivot your perspective and viewpoint on it. You can pivot your approach to something that you may have failed at that point in time as well. You can begin to learn, right, okay, what is it that I done? How did I apply it? What can be done instead? What alternative can I take to that as well? Failure is it's a beautiful thing. I hate it. We've got a love-hate relationship, but it's a beautiful thing, and it's very much needed to understand and know yourself, and grow in your confidence, and grow in your self-awareness, and grow in your understanding. Society puts a lot of pressure on being the perfect person, doing the perfect thing, and it has done for many years, and it's even more so with social media. But being vulnerable and being open and honest with other people, but then also yourself, is such a freeing thing. You're letting go of the expectations of society, of the expectations of other people that they've put on you, and also then of yourself as well. And I say these things as though it's easy. It's not an easy thing. I know it's not an easy thing, but these things will take time to build upon and learn and understand as well, that it's needed. I failed at something. That's okay. What can I do to learn from that? How can I, reapproach it? Or is it something where I now need to kind of change my focus on something else? If you've tried something and failed, try again. Definitely try again. Definitely try again. And it's always about that balance, isn't it? Sometimes it's knowing when something has run out of time and you don't need to try it. And then other things is, you can try the one time. If you failed at it, let me try and realign and see and reassess and take a step back, So, agony aunt segment. We are back with another dilemma. And so today's dilemma has been submitted by a 29-year-old woman, and they say, I haven't had much contact with my family for several years because they were quite abusive towards me. Unfortunately, no one in my family recognizes this, and they are rather angry that I broke off contact. In recent years, I had a wonderful, supportive boyfriend by my side. After 4 years of relationship, he broke up with me out of the blue 4 weeks ago. Now I suddenly feel again that my parents are right and that I am not lovable. As a woman, do you always feel that you are only complete if you have at least a family member/partner that loves you? I'm now 29 and I feel like I have failed in life because I don't have a man by my side and no family of my own. I actually have a great life with lots of friends, hobbies, and a job I like, but I still feel like I've failed somehow. How should I deal with it? Firstly, sorry to hear about, your recent breakup. That's definitely something that can be so challenging to navigate. And also you mentioning that you feel that your parents are right, that you are unlovable. That definitely is not the case, and you are a lovable person. One we can say as well that you have done the right thing by breaking off contact with them, and that will allow you to kind of begin to heal from the past and also then begin to step into this new chapter in your life. When certain situations like such as this one, with out of the blue with no explanation, all those things that had kind of potentially been suppressed and blocked out by your family and things that they had done and said to you. When a situation like this arises, it can come crashing in and it can become so overwhelming that the thoughts that you begin to believe aren't even of your own, because a situation like this that you may have been trying to protect yourself from has happened. And so it can begin to feel like a fact. I feel like I'm unlovable and my parents are correct, which is not the case at all. I think it's definitely something to begin now to try and, first of all, work through and begin to learn what it's like to be alone, being in a long-term relationship, such a massive thing. And then to kind of go through something like that, breaking up out of the blue, can feel confusing and conflicting, and then trying to find also potentially like your identity again as an older person than what you were when you initially went into the relationship can be quite a challenging thing to do. And so I think definitely using this time now that you're in to understand yourself, who you are as a person outside of a relationship, what your identity is, and then also begin to work through potential trauma from your childhood up until the point that you've broken contact with your family, and then also anything that potentially has occurred through your relationship. If it was a loving relationship, great, there's always something to learn and reflect on as well. And you may not ever get answers from your ex, but it's not about seeking that, it's just seeking for yourself, trying to find that own, I don't know if closure is the right word, but yeah, begin to understand that too. Also want to say that you haven't failed as a woman. This goes back to the whole societal pressures and expectations, right? About having to be in a loving relationship or be in a relationship at a certain age and be married by a certain time and, have a house with kids at a certain time. And that's not the case. I'm hoping that we're beginning to kind of shift into a place in society that we are beginning to kind of shift the narrative and the mindset around what, quote unquote, we should be doing by a certain age. No one writes the rules for us apart from ourselves and God. And so you haven't failed. There is nothing there that is showcasing that. And it's about asking yourself that question as well. It's like, what do you view as failure? Why do you view it? And is that your own belief, or is that something that has been ingrained into you and shaped and molded into you? You saying that you feel like you failed somehow, again, try and be specific in regards to what it is that you feel like you failed at. It would really help begin to unpick and learn those things too. And again, know where that may potentially come from, like what the root of that is as well. And yeah, I think those are the first two things that I would suggest to try and do in this new chapter of your life. It's not about being in my single era and going out and doing things and then distracting yourself. That may be all fine and well, but over time that won't ever get you to heal and understand and learn from experiences. So girlies, that is all for today's episode. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, follow me on Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Also follow me on Instagram. So the notes to her pod on Instagram, and then Rianne Walker, but instead of the E, it's an X in Walker. And yeah, I will see you girlies in the next episode. Loves ya.